Stego, you're watching Ganadago One-on-One. I'm your host, Lauren Gardung-Hirdo-Goismacumber. In studio with us right now is newly elected Grand Chief Joe Norton. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So what was your reaction to being elected as Grand Chief?
Well, I don't want to sound, that I was overconfident, but I felt fairly sure that I would win. I don't know, what the margin would have been, but at the same time too, I was surprised. It was, or not surprised, but it's almost like it's happened, and so it put me in a I guess a frame of mind where, surprisingly and not surprisingly, there were people out there who supported me and were happy that I threw my hat in the ring and didn't get tossed back out, and that they did vote. They did come out and vote, and they supported me.
Mm-hmm. So what made you run for Grand Chief? Why now, after 9 years of being away?
Well, when I left office, there was a fairly good, structured type of movement that we had worked on. The people that I was working with 11 years ago, some, or if not most of them, are gone. The administration is kind of changed a bit, but basically, I was quite satisfied with. As a matter of fact, at the time when I left, I said this would be the best time to leave because things were going good. People seemed to be fairly happy, and I felt comfortable that there was things that were accomplished that I was looking out to do. And my parting discussions with the Grand Chief, or not the Grand Chief, but Mike DeLille back then and others on council was, take this to the next level. Always moving to the next level continuously. Don't be happy, don't be satisfied where you're at. Don't get complacent. Community needs more. We always have to move to the next level. And on the other hand, the governments out there, federal, provincial, municipal, and whatever else, still want more all the time from us. So you have to be vigilant and on your toes. So I retired at that point in time, feeling pretty good that was in place. Wanted to retire on a high. The finances were good. Employment was our employment was high. People were working, and welfare rolls were pretty much down to a very lowest level in our history, in our modern times. So it felt good, and I left, and I said, that's what I wanted to see. Continue, make it even better, And basically, over the course of 11 years, can't put all the onus or the blame on one individual, but just in general, it seemed like things weren't happening, or the surpluses we had were being wiped out. That's the term I'll use, and it didn't look very good. The financial reports that we got, the budget that were issued to the community in terms of through the media or via press releases, did not impress me one bit, and I wasn't happy with that. And I just knew that we could do more, combined with the fact that I was out in the private sector, and many opportunities I could see coming for us. Some I had presented at times to the council were not necessarily embraced by them. Some were in the gaming industry, and where I was used to participating in one way or another, as well as in other areas, in industrial types of potential development. So combined with and also a third element was people in the community saying, you gotta get back in there, we're not happy with where things are going. Employment, the employment issue was a major one, economic development was a major one, and at times they almost felt like they were in competition with the MCK, meaning the business side of the community, in their initiatives. So that was a very powerful inducement to get back into into the political leadership. I had traveled extensively across the country in the U.S. I kept up with what was happening politically in the community. You know, I never allowed that to disappear or consider it, you know, not part of my life, because it has an effect on me. It has an effect on my children, on my family, grandchildren, you know, what have you. So all of that combined just said to me, you got to get back in there. You got to go for it, you know. And that's what I did. And I worked with a good team of people who helped me, who pointed out to me certain things that I needed to concentrate on. And so I wasn't a one-man show. You know, there were many behind me, and they were very experienced people. And basically what I liked was the fact that it was from all sectors of the community, people supporting me, from the professional business, from the professional government side of Kahnawake, if you will, people working major, directors and managers like that, talking to me and saying, you've got to do something, to the business sector of the community, then to the everyday person on the street who simply said, we need something more than what's happening now.
How did you feel the MCK was in competition with the private sector businesses?
Well, in some of the initiatives that I saw coming out through Dewa Denizakta and with the MCK itself, some of the fields that they entered into, it kind of, and it basically was to help alleviate the burden of financial problems that were there. It kind of cut into the areas where I think there could have been, you know, good private public sector arrangements that could have been made in the gaming industry, as well as the wind energy, things of that nature. Rather, it was just exclusive to the MCK or Dewa, supported by MCK. And as well, there was other opportunities that were out there that the council itself could have supported the individual business people to participate in.
So we're going to take a quick break, but we will be right back after this. You're watching Kaná One-on-One. Welcome back to Kaná One-on-One. In studio with us right now is the now Grand Chief Joe Norton. I'm your host, Lauren Macumber. So earlier you were discussing some of the ways that you felt the MCK was kind of competing with the private business sector of the community. Did you want to elaborate a bit more on that, or?
Well, in talking to the business sector of the community and individuals who wanted to start a business, you know, they were saying basically that they needed more opportunities to be supported by the MCK, and there was concerns that, you know, some of these ideas might be taken either by Dewa Denizakta or by the MCK and implemented by them rather than supporting the individual. Some of it might have been not accurate, you know, in terms of how they felt, but some of it they felt was very legitimate. So there was a reluctance really to put any trust or faith in the MCK. Mind you, it's not everybody, okay, but when it comes to business, there's that kind of sense out there at times that there's not it's a question of maybe of not enough support by the MCK for what they're doing.
So how do you plan on turning that around?
Well, if there's opportunities that are feasible, that individuals come to our table directly to me or whomever else, and there already are opportunities that are out there, then that have been talked about. Then, you know, we've got to look at it very closely and give it as much of a review and support as possible. A lot of it revolves around, you know, the financing. Where does the financing come? So you have to look at a complete package of whatever people are bringing, and if it can be done, if it's feasible, then let's help them. You know, let's get it done. basically, that's what Dewa Denizakta is there for. If they're not in a position to support it, then we'll find other means to do it. But we have to do that. There's also through my own initiatives and my contacts, people who are knocking on the door from outside of Kahnawake who want to come in and establish some kind of business relationships, whatever else. And this is something that I want to open to the public to become involved in. Not just employment side of it, but also being establishing strategic business alliances and potentially investment, because there is money in the community, there's no question about it.
Okay. Would you want to comment on the current situation revolving around Dewa Denizakta and Michael Rice's public letter to the community?
Well, there has to be an investigation or maybe a review of what Mike has put forward, because there's something in there that does make one wonder, as to the process between Dewa Denizakta and its board, the MCK, and any other businesses that have been established. If it's Continent 8, if it's MIT, then that needs to be looked at closely, and either put to rest for once and for all, or something needs to happen if there is indeed something that's not proper.
So what other issues do you think are important to address?
Well, certainly there's the one of the main things that has been discussed over and has been used very broadly in the campaign by individuals who wanted to get elected, and that is membership. That is a very, very utmost issue that needs to be reviewed in one way or another. What's happened over the last year and a half, and going back historically too. I keep repeating to people that I was part of a major movement in 1981 as one of the authors to put together the document known as the moratorium on mixed marriages way back when, in 1981, and moving forward from that time period up until now, more recently today, that is still continue to be a controversial issue. The one thing that I want to say to the community and to the public that is I'm very glad that there is a discussion. It's not always the best discussion, but I am happy that it's taking place. And I want that dialogue to continue till we get to a point in time that we can safely say, okay, we've reached a certain level of common understanding. But we can never say it's final, it's over, it's done with. We've always got to leave it open for the future generations to be able to look at that matter and tweak it, change it, amend it, in view of the fact that their circumstances will be different, even 10 years down the road, even like 5 years down the road, 10 years, 15, 20, well into the future. So we've got to come to a point now where we can safely say that, we've gone as far as we can. This is the max that we can reach at this point in time. What the company, the community will feel relatively good about, and that's what happened in 1981 and in subsequent years. It's always reaching a new level, because there's never going to be a finality to this. It'll always be evolving. That's the way I look at it. Rather than regressing, it'll be evolving continuously.
Yeah. In an interview with APTN, you said that you wanted to sort of not put an end to it, but deal with it so that our future generations don't have to deal with it. That sort of had a tone of finality to it, whereas now you're sort of saying...
well, I mean, in explaining it, it bringing it to a point in time where the future generations won't have to deal with what we've had to deal with at this point, where it won't be such an emotional, knockdown, dragged out, kind of internal, even I hate to use the term conflict, but that's what it's really evolved into. So we do all that, we get rid of all of that, and then we provide something for the future that it's a lot easier for them to move it along in a less confrontational circumstance.
How do you plan on doing that?
Very carefully. No, through dialogue and demonstrating how we can make our way through this. And that leads the way, as far as I'm concerned, to many other major issues that could be considered controversial, that we develop a pattern and a way of dealing with it. And this is one of the most controversial situations. And it leads to, oh, this is not so bad anymore. You know? We've covered that, and it's going to be through dialogue. It's going to be allowing participation of all sectors of the community. We can't restrict. We cannot. And on top of that, we have everybody watching us. We have court cases sitting there, and that's not going to help the circumstance. It's not even going to help the people who are suing us. You know, it's not going to do anything for them. All it's going to do is cause them more heartaches, because the community will never allow an outside court, an outside government to say and dictate to us who we are and what we are.
Yeah. How do you feel your approach will differ from former Grand Chief Mike DeLille's?
Well, I think it's allowing more inclusivity, providing opportunities for everybody to dialogue in this, rather than saying, and meeting with everybody too, and rather than saying, no, we only can meet with one part of the community and the other part has no chance to participate. Now, I may hear back from people in the community about that, but you know, that's the way I've approached it. Been asked that question before, and that's what I basically have responded to.
Could you ever envision a Kahnawake where there is a non-residency law for non-natives to live in the community?
It may be. It's always been here. It's not been put in writing though. You know, so whether people know it, understand it, or recognize it, you know, there's over the course of history, it's been there, and it's been a toleration.
So would you be one to solidify this as opposed to it just being a toleration?
Well, it's not just me. It's one who brings it into the community and says we've done it before. The question will be, do you want to do it again? Do you want to continue that practice? And if you do, then then it will be put down on paper. Before, it wasn't on paper. It was all oral.
Yeah. How would you sort of simmer the current situation? You know, people putting up signs, you know, marry out, stay out, the protests in front of people's homes.
Well, I think people realize that that doesn't do anything to resolve the tension in the community. It puts us in pretty bad light outside of the community, you know, and has caused a lot of misunderstanding about what it means. You know, is it just general across the board? You don't want non-native people here, or is it very specific to this particular circumstance? You know, and the answers have been varied on that, and it's angered a lot of our own people to say, you know, how can you say that? That means the people that come and go every day, you don't want them here. And the response might be, wow, you know, they know what we mean, but do they? Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. You're watching Ganadigo One-on-One. I'm your host, Lauren Gerdum-Hirdo-Gwesmacumber. In studio with us right now is the newly elected Grand Chief, Joe Norton. Welcome back to Ganadigo One-on-One. I'm your host, Lauren Gerdum-Hirdo-Gwesmacumber. In studio with us right now is newly elected Grand Chief, Joe Norton. So, you were away for 11 years. What were you doing during that time?
Well, many things. I took a break from the community, I'll be honest about it, and I had moved away to the Ottawa region, but I mean, it's not far, so I was back and forth on a weekly basis. I was involved with the gaming, online gaming industry. I was a consultant for a number of different sectors, basically involving First Nations. I worked. I had a contract with Siemens Canada and helped develop First Nations sector, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a variety. I did a contract with the Canada Bridge Corporation, which was the beginning of the work that was done on Mercier Bridge. All the contracting that went through the Bridge Consortium, and I did the same thing in Akwesasne, and helped negotiate and put together an agreement, an arrangement that eventually led to the new bridge that was built there and the dismantling of the old bridge. So I was quite busy, and I had contracts all across the country for different First Nations organizations. I did some work with the AFN for a while, and you know, off and on in bits and pieces. So I was quite busy.
Yeah. Do you think being away changed your perspective and maybe your style in politics?
A little bit. I think what it did was make me more aware of how progressive Kahnawake has been, but my being away from Kahnawake also took me globally. I was all over. I was in Europe. I was in Asia. I was in Africa. I was in you know, out in the South Pacific, and I got to see a lot of things. I was in Hong Kong and places like that. So I got to see a lot of things also that added to my knowledge or to my own personal feelings about being in Kahnawake and being elsewhere, and being able to see how other cultures were living and how business was done out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it brought me back. When I come back here now, and I'm here sitting here in Kahnawake as the Grand Chief again, it gives me quite a global view that I can draw on in terms of being able to deal with issues here. And also it set up a whole network of people for me that I can also get in touch with, who are interested in doing business with First Nations in Canada, but more specifically bring them to Kahnawake because of the location and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to focus a lot on internet gaming, since that was one of your strong points in
That'll be part of it, but it won't be all of it, because there's more to it than just that. We can't be just a one industry type of community. We've got to be very diverse, as the tobacco industry has proven. I mean, there was a lot of which is good, but there was a lot of concentration that was placed on that in terms of for the future, and there is still an opportunity to continue in the tobacco industry, but we also have to be diverse, and we can be. And there's contacts that have been made with me in the area of transportation, setting up a driver's ed academy for long distance haulers, you know, and attached to that would be a number of different other aspects for that, you know, free trade zone, trade, what do you call that, warehousing, and a whole wide range of where we can utilize all of the things that are here now, the infrastructure, such as the railway, the highway, the bridges, the seaway, to our advantage. And there's a whole other story behind that, how I'd like to approach that, but we don't have the time.
You can touch on it if you'd like.
Yeah, well, it's taken jurisdiction over all of that infrastructure that's been placed here, creating our own legislation to do that, and declaring all those things here that are illegal. But then if they want to stay here, sit down, renegotiate a package with them in terms of compensation, as well as our being able to utilize that to our advantage without being blocked by all kinds of different rules and regulations and policies. So that's a whole onto itself, a package of another way of approaching it.
Okay, we only have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we end?
Yes, let's call it the agenda that I'm building is, and the plan I'd like to put in place and introduce to the community is long term. a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20, and so on and so forth into the future. It's going to require community support and visioning of themselves and their children. It's not going to be just Joe Norton's plan or the Mohawk Council of Kahnawak's plan or our vision. It has to be the vision of all. And it's somewhat, it's what I've been hearing for a long time. And I think it's a great opportunity now to begin to put the pieces together and allow for the future generations, the future leadership coming forth to be able to take that plan and expand on it, alter it, in whatever they would. So it's not going to be set in stone that this is the way it is and the only way it is, because the future has to be able to decide for itself what needs to be done. It's part of the overall approach that we use in terms of the two-role approach to our relationship between Canada and whoever else, our neighbors and whatever else evolves in the future. So I liken that as the only fallback position that we can have. And I'd like the community to participate in that, be a part of it, embrace it, and accept it as the way we would deal with our future. And our future isn't us, it's the younger generation, the people that are out there. I had the honor of addressing the 2015 graduating class from the Kahnawake Survival School yesterday. It's quite an emotional moment to hear some of the speakers and that got up and spoke to the students, as well as the students themselves. And it's been a long time since I had done that, so it really brought me back to what this position with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake is, the position in the community is, in terms of how we deal with our future, and our future is our children.
Well, thank you so much
My
for being
pleasure.
on today and for sharing. I look forward to seeing the work that you do in the next 3 years. Nyawankoa, everyone, for listening. This is Ganadigo One-on-One. I'm your host, Lauren Gurnumhirdo-Gwesmacumber. In studio with us was the newly elected Grand Chief Joe Norton. Nyawankoa, Onikiwahi.
Ora.